And so that's when I figured out that I had actually had the thing in backwards the whole time.
That's why I kept making popping sound.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again. It is Thursday night. You have made the right choice. You are hanging out with us on the American Sci-Fi Classics Track, and tonight we have assembled an awesome batch of learned individuals once again, and we're going to kind of go a little inside fandom, a little inside, I would say inside baseball, but baseball has rules and it's weird. So I'm gonna turn it over right now. First of all, let's go around and introduce everybody who's here. One internet away from me, Miss Lola.
I was saying hello on the YouTubes. I've got the live YouTubes up so we can monitor that.
We are all over the interweb.
I know.
Two internet away from you, Mr. Darin Bush.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm still Darin M. Bush, science fiction and fantasy short story author. In fact, I just recently added another short story to my Amazon authors page. It's a short story called Playing the Good Girl, which by no coincidence at all has a very strong female lead who is a complete train wreck. Who's trying to fit in? Who's trying to fit into society?
Nice. 1, 2, 3 internets away from me. It's our friend Deanna Toxopeus. How are you?
I am up north where there is finally snow. It is good.
I thought there was snow all the time up there.
No, we had a late winter. We had a green Christmas. It was not fun. I was very disappointed.
So diagonally across the internet from me, my unindicted co-conspirator, Mr. Gary Mitchell.
Hello, my familiar.
That's right. I just want Gary to turn me into a vampire, and he won't do it.
Yes. But hello, everyone. I am Gary _Mitchell. And yes, despite our best efforts, he remains Darin Bush. And to all our YouTube friends, I'd like to say hello, whether you're watching us now or in the future.
That's where we're going to spend the rest of our lives, Gary. And that's a cattail. That's awesome. But our moderator tonight, our friend, the very talented Sue Kisenwether.
We are not worthy.
Oh my God. This is Oswin. Here she is.
Yay!
And I'm Sue. I'm one of the hosts of Women at Warp on the Roddenberry Podcast Network. We are a feminist Star Trek podcast.
And it's awesome, and you should be listening to it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Should I just start?
I actually suggested it to my roommate who has just started watching Next Gen for the first time.
Oh boy.
She was watching the first season. She's like, I really think I love this Yar character.
Oh no.
No.
Oh, feels.
Gary, no.
Hey, but she has some fun.
Well, speaking of Star Trek.
Speaking of Star Trek.
Tonight we're going to talk about Mary Sue's. That lovely, lovely topic, that insult that gets thrown around willy-nilly and doesn't really seem to mean anything anymore. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk some about the history of the meme. We're going to remove my cat from my desk multiple times. We're going to talk a bit about the history. We're going to talk about the inherent sexism of the term. We're going to talk about the trope, what it has become, and yeah, we're going to at some point accept that the trope exists, determine what its criteria are, and to look at some of the characters who are often called Mary Sues and see if that is the case. And then we're going to ask some closing questions, which I'm probably the most excited about. But the beginning is the part where I talk a lot because it's history. So if you have something to add, panelists, jump in and say it. But I'm going to give us as much time in our assessment. Very nice. I am going to go as quickly as I can through the history stuff. So a lot of people, it seems, more people are learning, but a lot of people don't know. Backing up, starting that sentence over. Before I get into any of it, I do want to note that this conversation is inherently because of the pop culture landscape that we are currently in, this conversation is inherently cis-normative and gender binary normative at this point in time. So I want to acknowledge that and also say we need more gender nonconforming characters. We need more trans characters, and we need to stop assessing characters based on their gender overall. That is the overall statement at the top of this panel. Okay, now history of the Mary Sue. A Trekkie's Tale, a 1973 parody story in a fanzine called Menagerie, originally published anonymously, but the author was Paula Smith, who was one of the publishers of said fanzine. It's only a couple paragraphs long and readily available on the internet. So if you have some time, I recommend you go read it. And this story, A Trekkie's Tale, was written to parody the types of stories that the editors were seeing submitted to the fanzine. These were adventures where there was a new young lieutenant who was the youngest ever to graduate from Starfleet Academy, and she ingratiates herself to what they called the Big Three, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. She saved the day, and with her wit and ability and charm and looks and good grace, everybody loved her, and she took away the spotlight, and if she was a good one, she died at the end of the story. That was a Mary Sue. But in reality, it became a thing in fanfic where they talked about Mary Sue stories and they talked about Murray Sue stories, which was what Paula Smith notes rather than a Marty Stew or a Gary Stew. She talked about Murray Sues with other fanzines. But the thing about the fanzine community in the 70s and even the fanfic community today is that it skews heavily towards women. So there are a lot more women writers, which means there are a lot more women stand-in characters. Mm-hmm. But all in all, it is the concept of the Mary Sue is really a new name for an old thing. You can look at Pollyanna. You can look at so many other examples of stand-in characters found throughout the history of literature. And of course, in recent years, the practice of writing a character off as a Mary Sue has made its way out of the fan fiction community and become a term in the larger pop culture discourse in pro media. So that is a brief history of me talking very quickly about Mary Sues. Panel, does anybody have anything to add that I may have skipped over?
Is it possible that the Mona Lisa was the very first Mary Sue?
Possible. Probably not very first.
Helen of Troy, really, if you think about it, you know.
Mm.
The only
here's a question then, because going on Helen of Troy, does the Mary Sue in the original definition, do they have to be the protagonist, the main character, or can they be a side character?
So let's see. In 1976, so 3 years after this story was originally published, Paula Smith, the author, spoke about it. And she wrote or spoke that she was the protagonist of the story, but not the protagonist of the TV show, right? Because again, it was a fanfic space. So it's this new character who came on and sort of upstaged our regular protagonists, upstaged Kirk or Spock or McCoy.
Okay.
One of the observations that popped in my head when you were giving that sort of rundown was, well, of course there are female insertion characters, because let's look at popular media fiction of any kind. There aren't a lot of women. So if you want to, as a woman, put yourself in the story, you don't have a lot of people to project yourself onto. If you look at your classic Star Trek, there's Uhura and there's Chapel, and okay, yeah, Rand, but she's not around that much. So who are you going to project yourself onto, especially if you want to have conversations with Chekhov or with Sulu? Like, there's not a lot of places you can stick yourself. And, you know, Star Wars has Leia. And we're done, right? Mm-hmm. So what if Han Solo isn't your cup of tea and you want to write a romantic piece involving Wedge? Who are you putting, like, who are you going to end up with? I think it's only natural that a lot of these female insertion characters exist. especially given the fact that you're right, having been in the fanfic community for no surprise here, Sequest, and having contributed more than my fair share to that community at one point. Yeah, like you need some female characters because there's nobody there to sort of write about.
And I would argue that if someone is saying that the female characters are bland or they're too much this, too much that, maybe they don't know a lot of women. Maybe maybe they don't know how women are supposed to act. So,
Possibly.
Well, so to just keep it rolling, because we got a lot to get to, I want to bring our conversation into the inherent sexism in the term. I have a friend named Annika Dane. You can find her at manicpixiedane.com, who says a male Mary Sue is called a protagonist.
Yeah.
Which I think sums it up pretty well. But I touched on it a little bit, that they saw some of these male insert characters, but they were in the fanzine era, but far fewer of them. And it seems that in general, they're given a lot more grace than the women in the story.
Well, and that kind of ties into something I was thinking about, is like, we kind of have to cop to the fact that women saved Star Trek. Women started Star Trek. Women fandom kept it alive. Women, and most of the fanfic writers were women.
Can I just also point out that what we love about, and this is going to get some people mad, what we love about Star Wars can be attributed to George Lucas's wife, who was the editor of Star Wars, and a lot of the big story bips are her saying to him. So, for example, you can't have everybody go to the Death Star and nobody dies. Like it's too high stakes, and so she's the one who convinces him to kill Obi-Wan. And she was an Academy Award winning, her name has completely run out of my head. I will Google it in a second and sound very smart in a minute. But she actually was an Academy Award winning film editor. And in some ways, I mean, this is totally off topic, but in some ways I see the special editions of Star Wars where George went back and reinserted scenes that were cut as his sort of post-divorce revenge on his wife, because they're uneven and they don't work. And it kind of wrecks the sort of smoothness of the original trilogy. And a lot of that is attributed to her. And and so when you say women save Star Trek, women save Star Wars. Like she really made it a tighter, better story. So
I have
Marcia Lucas.
Marcia Lucas. Thank you, whoever said that. You are awesome, because her book.
Yes, let us know your name.
If anyone is interested in it, I have a.
Oh, that was Chad. Hi, Chad.
Of
course, it was Chad.
In Journey
Star Wars
Planet.
fact.
Can you guys not hear me?
We can hear you, but Gary's just talking. Talk over top. That's what I do all the time.
If anybody's interested, I do have a piece in Journey Planet, a fanzine a couple of years ago, about the herstory of Star Trek fandom. So there was a lot going on for a second, and it's very distracting.
Yeah.
The term Mary Sue was used to dismiss characters so frequently in fan fiction by the late 80s and early 90s that authors were trying to avoid it. And fandom scholars like Camille Bacon-Smith were noting that pro authors, not just fanfic authors, were saying things on panels, like at ClipperCon in '87. Every time I try to put any woman in any story I've ever written, everyone immediately says, "This is a Mary Sue." There's another panel she cites in 1990 that there's a growing dismay that any female character created within the fan community is immediately deemed Mary Sue. So it was happening in fandom as early as the mid to late 80s. It was happening in fan discourse of pro media not long after that. And there is a quote from a writer for Vox, Caroline Framke, who said, "Not every seemingly perfect heroine deserves to get written off so quickly, especially because it's so incredibly rare that a seemingly perfect male hero gets the same dismissive treatment."
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the meme that has gone around of saying, you're telling me that this nobody who grew up on a desert planet suddenly becomes a Jedi and is able to fly a plane and wield a lightsaber and use the Force better than anybody in the last 20 years. This Luke Skywalker guy is unbelievable.
This Anakin Skywalker. Let's look at the first prequel.
Well, he was 7. They had time to train him.
So those are midichlorians. Perfect explanation.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Roll eyes.
But-
So one thing, Sue, that I was not aware of in the original concept of the Mary Sue was the author insertion element of it.
Mhm.
And so I started chewing on that earlier this evening when I was doing some homework for this. And it occurred to me that there's a whole bunch of female protagonists that are automatically disqualified because they were written by men. Or created by men. So I'm sitting here going, now, of course, obviously someone in the audience is going, well, okay, then a man with a feminine, in touch with his femininity might have Mary Sued this character. But I'm like, there's a point where my response would be that the term Mary Sue, if we focus on the author insertion, the wish fulfillment part of fantasy part of this, lowercase f fantasy, then I would throw in people like Robert Heinlein as having tons of Mary Sue characters. Not that he created women characters that were Mary Sue's, but that his male characters were Mary Sue's.
Oh,
Because
didn't he openly admit that Lazarus Long was his basically self-insert?
He may have admitted that one, but there are about 19 others that we all kind of went, oh yeah, this is his own wish
too, that when, again, I hate talking in the binary, but I'm talking in the binary. But when men do this, it's called an autobiographical piece.
Yeah.
And when women do it, it's called a self-insert fantasy.
Well, if you want to even talk about the male, Luke Skywalker, the creation of George Lucas. I mean, it couldn't be more obvious. And that, in fact, if you know, the apocryphal story of the Mary Sue is that she's named for the author who created her. Now, as Sue explained, she's not. It was a parody piece. But the apocryphal story that I have heard at many a convention over the years is that it's the fact that it's named also for the author, shares the same name as the author, is also a big flag that it's a Mary Sue. But as we keep pointing out, Luke Skywalker, George Lucas, nobody stands there and points at him, and I wouldn't either, be except for in this frame of discussion, because it's Luke,
And that's a perfect segue into the next thing I want to talk about. Because if we are going to assess some of these characters who regularly get this criticism, then we need to establish our criteria.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the criteria has clearly changed over the years. At the beginning, based on a lot of stuff that was written and talked about at the time in the 70s, there were generally 6 things. The character was a woman, young, attractive, and exceptionally gifted, serve as the author's self-insertion, resolve the conflict of the story, win the love of the other characters, and die a heroic death at the end. That seems like a lot and very specific, right? And would take out so many of the characters that get this accusation. Of course, over the years, it has been, degraded, changed, evolved.
I'd say corrupted.
Corrupted
Corrupted to the point that
yeah.
any female character who is competent is suddenly a Mary Sue.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would argue it's any female character that the critic doesn't like is a Mary Sue.
That's certainly what it has become. This is
And
a woman I don't like.
I don't even think it's competency. I think it comes down to, this is a female character I don't like, and therefore I'm going to treat it like a Mary Sue. I'm going to call it a Mary Sue. And it's a fast way to shut down a conversation or to dismiss a character. It's become a shorthand in fandom. She's a Mary Sue.
It's a way.
Go ahead, Lola.
Go ahead, Lola.
I was going to say it's a way to turn a woman into a thing. She's a Mary Sue.
Yeah. It's a derogatory term. It's plain and simple.
Absolutely.
It's a derogatory term.
Author Ancy Crispin described the term as a put down, implying that the character is so summarily dismissed as not a true character, no matter how well drawn, what sex, species, or degree of individuality.
Yep.
So where we are now today is everybody seems to have a different definition of what it really means, because it does not mean woman I don't like. Wikipedia says, a Mary Sue is a type of fictional character, usually a young woman who is portrayed as unrealistically free of weakness. Originating in fan fiction, a Mary Sue is often often an author's idealized self-insertion. Mary Sue stories are often written by adolescent authors. Of course, that's Wikipedia. Anybody can edit that. So I went to the OED. The OED says, depreciative. Originally in fan fiction, a type of idealized female character, typically a young woman, unrealistically lacking in flaws or weaknesses. So,
well, somebody who edited Wikipedia had read the OED. There's some similarity there.
Yes, well, that's good, right? That they're similar.
Well, but, Sue, let me ask a dumb question real quick. And maybe this is one of those unanswerable questions: is do we need the term at all? Are there not at all? Are there no protagonists that are so syrupy and awesome and terrific that they're negative, that they're kind of useless as heroes because they're so perfect?
Superman?
Oh,
well,
I just heard Michael Bailey screaming.
Yeah, I was going to say Michael Bailey and I are going to pitch on that.
Yeah, but as Sue, as you pointed out in the notes you gave us before the thing, and I didn't think about this until you pointed it out. Superman's kind of because he was written by two immigrant boys, two Jewish kids from New York. So while I was attempting to make a point and I've lost it completely.
I think
it's because you're a Mary Sue, Joe.
That's right.
Well,
I'm the Mary Sue of this.
I think one of the things, one of the points is that the characters tend to be idealized. And I think, Joe, maybe what you're thinking is that Superman is an idealized version of American, even though he's alien, he's still very American. Yeah. He's idealized. And so
that's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing. Like for example, when a person creates a story, and in that story, the lead character is good at everything.
Yeah.
That's when the Mary Sue connotation should be applied.
I mean, I think I asked the question because I think we need the term. We need to shrink it down to what it really is useful for.
Right.
I would say that Ash from The Evil Dead is his own Mary Sue, because the premise of Army of Darkness is that he's telling somebody the story of how amazing he was when he time traveled and saved the world.
Right.
We see the real story and that he's a complete doof.
But that's what I want to do right now. Is I want to take gender out of it.
Yeah.
Forget assigning a gender to it. But aside from it being a woman, what is a Mary Sue? Is it a character with no flaws? Is it a character who's immediately good at everything? What, for the purpose of tonight, is the key to what the trope of a Mary Sue is? Let's go around, because everybody's going to talk at once, and I'm going to say, Joe, hit it.
I believe that coming into a story with nowhere to go in the story, like all your problems are solved, either beforehand or you have none. And why is that person even in the story? Even if the person has no purpose other than, well, he's great. And he just comes through the story shooting everybody, blowing stuff up, or whatever. If there's nowhere for him to go to grow or to not grow, or to diminish, then there really shouldn't be an effect. There isn't an effective story for that person. So I feel like that's
no growth, no room for growth.
Right.
Lola, what do you think?
I would say what I said a minute ago, idealized. The way someone wants to be, and this also has to go with the insertion. It's the way the author wants people to be. So idealized.
Darin.
I'm really think we need this term to reflect that there is some I'm going to use a vulgar expression, there's some masturbatory fantasy in these characters. They're not they're not just two-dimensional, they're just the author inserted. I really like that part of the discussion. I like the idea that we're talking about a character that has no ability to have an arc, as I'm stealing that from Joe. That is really there to fulfill some role that has nothing to do with the reader. The removal from the reader is, to me as a writer, that connecting to the reader is the whole point. I want you to have some reaction and feel something from my characters, and having a character that's just like completely shiny and golden and flawless, nah, that doesn't do the job.
I don't think I mean like supporting characters. Like they have a purpose, like Commissioner Gordon, Jimmy Olsen.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they don't have tons of flaws. Well, they have some, but
has flaws.
Well, it generally doesn't get leveled against supporting characters.
No,
that has to be one of the criteria. It has to be a lead.
No, I mean, to be fair, Rose had it leveled against her in Star Wars.
That is true.
And that's also wrapped up in race too. There's other stuff going on in there, right? But sorry, I'll just jump in here. Darin, are you finished, or because I don't want to cut you off?
He's muted, so I think he's finished.
Okay. So I said that like the perfection is part of it. But I also think the youth is part of it, because that's part of their giftedness. That's part of the reason why they shine so bright and why their death is so tragic, because their life is not yet lived. And so they're cut off in the flower of their youth, or whatever terms you want to use. So yep, perfection, idealized. I agree with Darin that it is the author sort of engaging in writing for themselves and not for a reader. And I also think that you know, I don't know if they have to be the love interest. It kind of ends up happening a lot, but I think that the youth is there because as their tragic death happens, that's the tragedy of their death, is not just that they save the day, but that they are not around to continue this amazing life and contribute more to our greater society.
And fix everything.
Fix everything.
All right, Gary, you got anything to add?
I would add they have to be idealized within the story. Every other characters have to go, wow, they're great.
Yeah.
Now, this new person that's come in is so awesome. And that's I think the only thing that I didn't hear anybody else mention that I think is a key part of it. It has to be, it's almost like a wrestling character where, you know, like Hulk Hogan, drink, eat your vitamins, drink your milk and all that. And everybody else going, yeah, he's the man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where we are, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, which is why it can't be a supporting character.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gary's reinforcing the fact that it really cannot be a supporting character. Doesn't work.
Okay. So where we are is young, idealized / perfectionist, no weaknesses or flaws.
Oh, and on the flaws, they have any flaws that they do have, help them, don't hinder them.
They're noble flaws, like, they're combative.
Caring too much.
They self-sacrifice.
They're interview flaws.
Right. That's what I say in an interview. I care too much. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay. So we've got young, idealized, no weaknesses or flaws, or noble flaws, if there are any. Author insertion / an author writing for themselves, not their audience. Praised by our other characters, and no real problems of their own to solve. Mm-hmm. All right. Is everybody happy with those criteria for this evening?
Yeah.
All right. So let's hit it. And let's start with the one that I'm sure came to mind for everybody, which is our good friend Rey Skywalker. Spoilers.
Yes. Yeah.
And the internet blew up.
Yes. It's like, I will defend Rey to my dying day because of the fact, like I said at the very beginning, everybody loves to say that she shouldn't have all these skills and all this. And it's like, she has more backstory than Luke does at the beginning of New Hope. We see her.
Gary, I'm going to stop you right here.
Okay.
Because you're defending the character. You're not answering the question.
Okay. So I will answer the question as
a Mary Sue.
No.
Why or why not?
she does have flaws. She can be naive, which is not a positive flaw. She is desperate to not change, which is also not a positive flaw.
Not the author's self-insertion. Who
I
created
would
her?
say she's insecure. I would say she's insecure because she wants so desperately to know who her family is, where she comes from. She can't quite stand on her own right now.
Yeah. I would say, again, I agree, no, but she doesn't really drive the story.
No. And that's for other reasons because of fandom. But that's another panel and not on this track. So but yeah, she certainly doesn't drive the story at all. And she doesn't die a tragic death in the end. Like, she survives. You could make a better case for Kylo Ren being a Mary Sue. And I don't want to use I personally don't want to use the term Mary Sue because it's so gendered. I think to me a Mary Sue is lazy writing. And it's a poorly drawn character. And so I think you're better off using that term. And so in that case, Kylo Ren to me is far more of a poorly drawn character than good old Rey.
He's just a wannabe Vader.
Yeah, like, and so there you go. He's better at being Vader than Vader is. He's and he has a tragic death, and he wins the love of a girl, and he resolves the conflict of the story. Now, he's not without flaws, but he's young and perfectly gifted. He has huge flaws, and
he's shredded.
Yeah, I was going to say he's very well gifted.
Pants scene right now. The high-waisted pants. Everybody's thinking that.
In the interest of getting to as many of these as possible,
yes.
Does anybody disagree? Does anybody say yes, Rey is a Mary Sue? Okay, cool. Moving on. I want to hit what I consider the big three franchises first. And if you disagree with me, I don't care because I'm the one on the screen.
Start your own panel. And your own panel.
Next character.
But when you're on YouTube, you get on YouTube.
Michael Burnham. Anybody?
I went first last time. I was
I will say and this is not a Mary Sue thing. It's a general character thing that gets on my nerves. A lot of characters in these big franchises are perfect. They're always the top. They're the best. They're best out of the Science Academy. Best this, best that. And she does fit into that camp, I believe, because before, as they said, you were the best until you weren't. She was the best at everything until she kind of broke bad. So I will say that. But I wouldn't say that's because of her gender. It's just the way she was written. She is the best.
She also certainly, I'm going to say, has flaws. Like, she's prideful. She thinks her way is the best way. She doesn't follow orders very clearly. If you're caught up on season 3, she doesn't follow orders. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things with Starfleet, right? They're showing you in general, until this year, they're showing you the best of the best, right? Because that's who they want to make the show about. So maybe we come off of the Michael Burnham conversation and we ask the Beckett Mariner question. Because I think that a lot for anybody who watched Lower Decks. Is Beckett Mariner a Mary Sue?
No.
I don't see that at all, personally.
No. Flaws out the yin-yang, right? Like, she has the greatest contraband collection in the history of Starfleet, including the Spock helmet, which didn't even actually ever appear in canon on the show until this moment. So like, I know that was such a deep cut. That was for
I
those
love the deep cuts.
Like, it was like, oh my god, they're like.
And she certainly doesn't get praised by the other characters as much.
No, she doesn't. And in fact, she's seen as a problem. Even like her own mother sees her as a problem. So she is not. Now, my brain is shutting down, but the male character in Lower Decks is really your Mary Sue.
He's literally meant to be fans.
Yeah. he is the one who comes in and is trying to be perfect. Now I wouldn't even call him that, because he's not without flaws himself. He's he lacks confidence. He wavers. He's not strong in his personality. And so Brad Bolmer, who's done by Jack Quaid, if you want to talk about a Mary Sue character, it's him. But even he's not really, because the characters are better drawn in that show. They're pun, but they're a better written set of characters. So no, not at all.
All right, let's keep going. The 13th Doctor.
Ooh.
I would say no, and I don't want to dominate the conversation here, but the fact is, she's the Doctor. The Doctor is Deus Ex Machina. God out of the machine is the actual premise of this entire show. And it has been since it started, that this all-powerful, all-knowing being, who, maybe he can't snap his fingers like Q and make us all, turn into lizards or something, but he steps out of the machine and literally saves people from the eruptions at Pompeii. And he does these things where he can, break through barriers of time and create doppelgangers of himself, because timey-wimey. So to say that the 13th Doctor is a Mary Sue, well, if you're going to say that, then you're saying David Tennant's a Mary Sue, and Tom Baker is a Mary Sue. And that's... No,
I mean,
they're
jumping
flawed.
ahead on my "is he a Marty Stew" list is every other Doctor.
Yeah.
And I would say to them too, because they're flawed, right? Like, if you look at it, Tennant is willing to walk away and let the people of Pompeii die, let Peter Capaldi die, so he can never become the next a doctor eventually. He's willing to walk away and let them die, and it takes Donna screaming at him to get him to come back. And in fact, that's the purpose of a companion, is to often act as the Doctor's conscience. And if you've watched the first Doctor, he's an arrogant jerk.
He's the same thing about Peter Capaldi's Doctor. Was very standoffish. That's what I thought about Peter Capaldi's Doctor.
No, I mean, none of them are. So by that definition,
get on time. None of them can arrive back on Earth on time.
No, we're going to drop you off. I'll come back in a week. 5 months later.
Okay, we're going to keep going.
Okay.
Next up, Shuri, Black Panther. These are all characters. I asked my Facebook who gets Mary Sue complaints. Every single one of these was on that list.
Somebody else talk, because I'll talk for days. So
sure, yes or no, everybody.
No.
Okay.
She is okay.
Race is also tied up in that too.
Yes.
Part of the reaction to Shuri is race. It's she's got the mise en. I'm going to say it wrong, but the mise en noir going on there, right? Like, she's black and she's a woman, so she's got two strikes against her, and so that automatically means that a whole group of people have decided they don't like her from the moment they see her. She's an annoying little sister who's really smart.
Buffy Summers.
Okay.
No, she's the chosen one.
But doesn't being the chosen one make her not have flaws?
No, she has total flaws.
Tons of flaws.
Several seasons are driven by her flaws.
Do you remember when she basically had sex with Angel and created a demon that killed this calendar? Like, hello. Like, her having sex nearly caused the end of the world.
Okay.
Arya Stark.
Oh. No.
Arya
is
I did not watch
close.
Game of Thrones, but apparently this was leveled because she came back in the finale, spoilers, I guess, and like, even though she had been training for this battle for the entire show, was apparently very good at fighting, and that makes her a Mary Sue, according to comments on my Facebook post.
And yet, interestingly enough, that's not aimed at Daenerys, who who is suddenly the chosen one who gets to fly a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because she was good looking? Because she got to date Jason Momoa?
And everyone falls in love with her.
Yeah,
Arya worked hard.
Lana Lang, Smallville.
Who?
Lana Lang.
I don't remember.
Stop talking over the moderator.
That was like 15 years ago. I don't remember.
I do remember, and I say no, she wasn't, because they couldn't think of anything to do with her. She wasn't. No.
All right. Bella Swan.
Ooh.
That's one I might actually say yes.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Twilight, so
she is basically the writer as the vampire loves me, and all the plot revolves around her.
So this is where we get into the argument about bad writing, right?
Yeah.
Like, and all
I've never seen it, but
the purpose of that story is a different kind of story. It's a romance story. So if we were to go and read Pride and Prejudice, are we going to accuse the heroines of Jane Austen of being Mary Sue, Elizabeth Beckett?
Sure.
Like, is she, like, you know, like, I don't think so, because they're different. They're not action adventure stories. They're not, like, if you look at most of sci-fi fantasy,
it's a romance.
It's a quest. It's the young man's journey into manhood thing. You know, Joseph Campbell, those themes running through. I think,
but bad writing can only excuse so much, and especially if the character is written that way. And I would argue that Bella is written to be this facet jewel that everybody's attracted to, everybody loves.
Yeah.
Her whole point in the story is to be desired by everybody,
and it's a romance. That's how romance.
Yeah, but
that's
you
how
can still
Harlequins
do.
are written.
Yeah, but that
Okay,
doesn't.
but Sue, let's keep going.
That still meets the criteria, though.
You need to read more romance.
Based on
I'm just
what you
saying the
set
lead
up,
from the Jewel of the Nile is a romance, and she's not a Mary Sue. So,
But that's
but
an action.
based on the criteria we set up earlier, she seems to be, if not a definite yes, the closest we have found so far.
I
Okay.
would say
I love
no.
you, Darin.
Next up, Squirrel Girl.
No.
No.
All right.
Oh my
Alice,
God, he's so
Resident
annoying
Evil.
at times.
Alice.
Sue, we didn't hear you.
I put you the list in the private chat, so if you don't hear me, you can see who's next.
Oh, sorry.
Also,
Keep up,
Alice,
people.
Resident Evil.
Alice is a clone, of course. Spoiler. Of course, she's gonna be perfect. She's a clone. She was
But
engineered.
we're not
that way.
excusing the character.
Okay.
We're saying yes or no.
Okay.
Again, she's another one that's close because she is an unflawed action hero.
Yeah.
She, you know, I like the character. I like the movies, but she is very much but she's as much of a flawless action hero as The Rock in any of his action movies.
Yeah.
You're defending again.
Yeah, I'm defending again. So
Hermione.
I'm gonna
Next up, Hermione.
All right.
no.
She
No.
has flaws, big ones. She's
All right.
vain. She adjusts her teeth with magic. She's vain.
Ripley.
That's true.
No.
No, wasn't written by a woman.
Well,
Done.
Sully.
Not an author insertion.
Hell, no.
No.
Ahsoka Tano.
No.
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 Captain
Didn't die of
Marvel.
tragic deaths.
No.
No.
Oh God, she's flawed.
Felicity Smoke.
She's flawed. She went for Ollie instead of Barry. Hello.
I liked her and Barry together too.
All right. So, having gone through that list, I have another list of male characters. Not quite as long. And I will remind everyone of the criteria we set up. Young, idealized, no weaknesses or flaws, author insertion, praised by other characters, no real problems of their own. James Kirk.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to defend Kirk. Write this date
No
down.
on Kirk.
Okay.
No on Kirk.
No on Kirk.
He's not without flaws. He's
does have flaws.
arrogant as hell. He cheated on the Kobayashi Maru.
I know.
Like, he's not without flaws. If he had been perfect, he would have beat the Kobayashi Maru without cheating.
Without cheating.
Now, OG
Write this day
Kirk,
down. I defended
now,
Kirk.
in the original series, I would say yes, but the flaw of the Kobayashi Maru was not introduced until then.
I
was.
Here's the thing. Original Kirk, like Shatner Kirk, supposedly reprogrammed the system to like prove he could do it. Right? So that's a flaw of intelligence, right? Of wanting to outsmart the machine.
It's also arrogance.
JJ Kirk, Kelvin Kirk did it, and then they showed us him being an arrogant asshole about it. So are those two, is that still the same flaw?
And I would also like to say, if we try to think of the perspective from 1960s guys who are writing these, they wouldn't see those as flaws. Arrogance wasn't a flaw. That was a sign of strength.
Yeah.
Speaking of 1960s guys who were writing these, how about Wesley Crusher? When that 1960s guy wrote a 1980s character.
Yeah, well,
and gave him his middle name.
Yeah.
Wesley Roddenberry.
Yeah.
Wesley is definitely hits the self-insert.
Hits the self-insert, but at the same time, if we look at is he cut off in the flower of his youth? Well, getting taken away by the alter being.
Travelers.
The traveler.
But he is well skilled beyond his years. The only thing he doesn't have is the admiration of everybody else.
No, he doesn't, because
not of the fan base, but
not of the character.
He's definitely solving all the problems. He's praised by at least Geordi and Data. He's very smart.
Or are you planning on it?
Hey, Joe, can you mute for a second?
Joe, can you mute while you have your father-daughter dispute? Say hi to Quinn for me. Hi, Quinn.
So, I mean, I'm going to, since we even know that the intention was for Wesley to be an author insert character of Gene Roddenberry, I mean, I land on yes with Wesley.
Yeah,
I would say yes at the beginning, but as Wesley develops and as
if we're going to bring character development into this, we can
just talk over Deanna.
Yeah, I told you I'm used to it. I just keep going.
I guess so.
But as Roddenberry's influence on the series pulls away, Wesley is grows and develops flaws all of a sudden, where he's pressured into lying about what happened at the academy.
Almost like Gene having less control over Star Trek was a good thing.
And the
Roddenberry Podcast Network.
Different panel.
All right. So we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. And we're going to say Luke Skywalker. Yes or no?
Again, original purpose. Yes, because he's named after George Lucas. He doesn't die the tragic death, but he's good at everything. He's good looking. Everybody likes him.
He's the good guy.
He's the good guy. But
every other doctor,
he grows.
No, we covered this.
No, they're flawed as all get out.
James Bond.
Oh my God, no.
I'm gonna kind of lean towards yes. He's a power fantasy.
He has the idealism.
Ian Fleming was a spy.
Yeah, and
there may be some author insertion in the novels.
And would this be somebody better like Alan J. Porter to have this conversation with? But also, the original novels were also abundance fantasies for the people reading them, because you'd have James Bond whipping off to some exotic city and eating like an incredible meal during post-World War II rationing England.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. He's a sharpshooter. He's an assassin. He's a combat hand-to-hand expert. He's a gourmand. He can gamble. Yeah.
He's funny.
Sharp dresser.
But you see, he's also flawed because...
But his flaws are flaws he needs to be a spy.
He chews through women at an incredible rate.
Well,
so he's not...
But
he
it
has
was
the flaw
that considered a flaw.
Yeah, no, and I would say yes, it is. I would say
yes, I would agree with you. But at the time, for the audience,
that was not a flaw. That was an ideal at the time.
For men, it would not be a flaw. But for a woman, as much as they might fantasize about an evening with Mr. Bond, the goal was to get somebody to settle down with. That was the cultural norm. I'm not talking that there were individuals,
which is why he was the power fantasy of not being allowed to settle down because he's a spy.
So let's say lean toward yes for Bond.
Yes.
I got two more guys on my list. Harry Potter.
No, he's flawed.
No.
He's so
super flawed, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Clark Kent himself, Mr. Superman.
I think you made a really good, compelling argument. If you want to talk about the original intent of this character, he's perfect. He's good looking. Everybody likes him, with the exception of his villains who don't like him. But they're villains. He gets the girl. You know, he can do everything. Like, you know, if you look at the bizarre powers Superman developed.
Wait, hold on, Deanna. You can't claim bizarre powers and original intent in the same paragraph.
Yeah, I know. I get it.
The original Superman could not fly, and he wasn't invulnerable.
Right, he could only jump. The flying came during the radio.
Jump.
It's certainly hard with some of these because they last years, decades.
Yeah.
So Michael Bailey, I got your back.
So we're talking like 30 Superman? Are we talking 40 Superman? Are we talking 80 Superman?
Yeah. All right. We got technically only about 10 minutes, although I know we're going to go over because we're us. Listen. Is there any characters that come to mind for any of you that I did not get on this list? What's up, Darin?
Okay, now this is a little meta, but the reason why Romancing the Stone is on the shelf back here is because my wife and I were talking about this panel earlier today, and she said, well, what about that Romancing the Stone lady? Wasn't she sitting at her typewriter and just crying and typing and typing? And I was like, oh, yeah. So I added that to the shelf because Kathleen Turner's character in the movie is not the Mary Sue, but her fictional character in the book she writes that made her the famous author, Joan Wilder, right? Joan Wilder, there we go. That is definitely a Mary Sue, and you get to watch in this movie, you get to watch a Mary Sue be created.
Yeah.
So
and that does kind of touch off a point that the discussion with Deanna we had about Bella reminds me is, are there genres where a Mary Sue is acceptable? Is it in a romance, don't you want them to be a Mary Sue?
Yes and no. It depends on what type of romance. So, for example, the classic Harlequin romance, yes, because she was very much an ideal of the feminine mystique of the young woman who would woo a man without ever having sex with him. She wouldn't compromise her virtue. She was everything. She would be chased frequently by two men in the book. But romance has grown up a bit, and there are other versions of romance where women have flaws, where they do things wrong, where they make mistakes. They're divorced, so they clearly have made a mistake. I mean, if you want to talk about like the Harlequin, if you look at the Hallmark Christmas movies,
I watched them.
Right there. Right, like the that would be a genre that tends to lean more towards the Mary Sue than anything else, because they're also selling an idealized version of American life and of romance and of the holidays.
The whole thing of those movies is
so when you want to talk about lazy writing and shortcuts and tropes, because tropes come in when a genre has been established and when authors start taking shortcuts and are lazy and don't bother to try and come up with new ideas. So
we gotta keep going.
Where it shows up.
Okay. Yeah, well, my mom used to never mind then. Let's keep go ahead, Sue.
How long is it, Gary?
Well, we just got a message from Joe that he's had to cut out, so we can go as long as we need, and he'll just shut it down later when he's done.
Okay, so there's going to be a blank
Joe.
Cool. All right.
So,
well,
everybody on YouTube, 6 hours.
I need to get some more wine. Yeah, I know it's going to keep live.
I do want to point out that in the list that we went through, I had far more women characters on my list than male characters.
Yeah,
but we pinpointed or said kind of to way more male characters than we did women characters. And isn't that interesting? Is that because they're throughout history have been more male creators?
Yeah, because then suddenly we start
more.
Because we start getting into, is Conan a Mary Sue? Is John Carter of Mars a Mary Sue? Because they may not be author insertions, but they certainly are a part of a genre and a fictional genre era where they were selling books to men who really wanted to be more masculine and get the princess and kill all the aliens and win the planet Mars for themselves, or conquer the jungle or conquer the Wild West. So,
well, yeah, that kind of comes into the come look at the sexism in the system. Male power fantasies are okay based on the way our society is built. It's acceptable for a boy to want to be James Bond, to want to be Luke Skywalker, to want to be Tarzan. And the girl's role in society and in fiction was to go, at the guy.
And Gary, a girl isn't going to watch Star Wars. They don't need representation there. Why do we need
interesting that it's not the self-insertion criteria that ruled out so many of these characters. It was the flaws.
Yeah.
It was that these are flawed characters, but people, the people who want to use Mary Sue as an attack don't bother to look for that. They just say, oh, look, a woman's a protagonist. And that's where we end up.
Yeah. Well, like we said, it's a knee-jerk reaction that comes when someone doesn't like a female character. It's a lazy way to criticize. So there you go.
I want to talk about the criteria we set in the first place. We've been through a bunch of characters. If anybody's watching has some more we didn't talk about, throw them in the chat. Maybe we'll get back to them if we keep going and Joe's not back yet. But I want to ask some of these questions. Why do we care if characters have these qualities? Is it bad writing to have a character who has no flaws? Yes?
Yes, they're boring.
Yeah.
Because really, if you think about it, Darin highlighted it, and I think Gary did too. A lot of these stories are written so that you have somebody that you can live another life with, that you can watch them go through struggles and you feel better. And a story without a character without flaws, well, you know they're going to win. You know they're going to get it all. Like they're perfect. It's done. So why am I giving up hours of my life in this book?
But isn't that every protagonist? Isn't that the point of being the protagonist? They're going to win.
But they don't always win.
Always.
Harry Dresden doesn't always win. Sometimes he does win technically, but at what cost? It's bad.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so, even if the character wins, sometimes there's cost, and the cost is something that hurts us. Think about those character deaths. Like Harry Potter wins in the end, but it comes at a big cost. There's a lot of people who die that we love. I still haven't for Lupin and Tonks.
And I think Deanna, you bring us to a good point, because we keep talking about Star Wars because of the obvious iconic characters. Everybody gets very upset about the whole Han shot first thing. Why? Because if Han shot first, then his character arc is more powerful in the movies. If he shot second,
nope.
Right.
I have a whole PhD thesis in that. Someday I'll write a PhD thesis on that, and I have a whole thing.
Yeah.
I hate to break it down to two sentences, but his character arc needs to be steep.
Yeah.
The Mary Sue's character arc is a flat line, pun intended.
Yep. And so if there's no flaws, there's nothing going on. There's no lesson for us to learn, because as the character learns a lesson, we also then learn that lesson at the same time vicariously. And ideally, if we talk about fiction, we talk about bibliotherapy, right? Like that's a term that's used where fiction is used as a way to teach people how to behave. Well, by watching this character go through that struggle, then you learn how to go through that struggle. And maybe you've had a similar struggle. Maybe you haven't taken on like the Empire, but maybe you've worked to try and redeem a father who is less than perfect and who has abandoned you. Like maybe that's your link to Star Wars, right?
Right.
So I want to read a quote from an article on, believe it or not, themarysue.com.
I love that website.
By Princess Weeks. And she wrote, I'm not going to say we should give badly written women a pass. I'm saying we should give them the same grace we give male protagonists, and really ask ourselves why we are so quick to dismiss the abilities of a woman while praising a man in the same breath.
Yeah. Well, look at the most recent Jurassic Park movies. If we flip Bryce Dallas Howard and
Chris
Pratt characters, if we were to just swap them, he would be this incredible Mary Sue. He's
a total Mary Sue. Sorry. He grew up, knows all the stuff about the dinosaurs, knows how to it's like I said earlier, it comes from it's like anytime you see a competent character, that's the first thing. Is like it's this idea that a lot of white men seem to have, is that women should be in a secondary position
They can't be an expert.
Mhm.
And so anytime a woman's dares to step outside of that defined gender role.
Get in the kitchen, woman.
It's the Dudley Dursley effect. So let's look at it this way. Certain group of people have grown up their entire lives having pretty much every pop culture franchise and property that they like to spend time with being about them. And suddenly, this year, one of the many movies that is coming out, or two of the many movies that are coming out, are not about them. And so there's this reaction, and it's very much like Dudley Dursley. 36 presents, but last year I had 37, or whatever the number is, don't take away my Harry Potter card.
Or Violet from, I'm sorry, I was just going to insert Violet from Willy Wonka.
Yeah, it's just the idea that because everything has been about them, suddenly that something might not be about them, and that they might have to learn to empathize with somebody who doesn't look like them can be very threatening to some people. And unfortunately, their life has not given them an opportunity to learn how to react to that in a different way. Whereas growing up, I had no choice. Like, I watched Battlestar Galactica. I watched all of these shows, and there were very few women in them that were action heroes. When we played G-Force, I played Jason because Princess was my friend, Joanne. So there was no other girl for me to be. So I'd be Jason.
That's a big conversation in like fan culture studies, if you could even call that a field, right? But the idea that people in marginalized groups learn at a young age to identify with characters based on their characteristics and not their gender or their race. But because there are so few people that look like you or that look like them to identify with, so that becomes less of a factor, and you look at the characteristics of the character. But because for a lot of white men, there are so many different kinds of white men to choose from, there's always one to identify with, right? So they never have to learn to divorce race and gender from the core of who the character is.
Yeah, and I wonder also part of it, how much of it is a I can't say the word.
Maturation.
Thank you. Of genre and fiction just in general, because if you look at a lot of, I like to read a lot of stuff from the 30s and 40s, and it was all the heroes are, look at Heinlein, all of his, brave space adventurers, Greystoke, Sherlock Holmes, all these characters were pretty much perfect power fantasies for it was an escape. That's why they called it escapism. And so I remember people complaining about whenever they would do a redefine of a character and suddenly give them flaws, and like, oh my God, you're ruining the character. And as opposed to like giving them depth. And so I wonder if that's a factor in it as well.
So I want to jump back to the questions about the criteria we said, and ask, because we talked about why do we care if a character has these qualities, but also I want to ignore the rest of the criteria and just focus on the self-insert one, the author insert. Are self-insert characters inherently bad?
No.
Expand, Darin.
I've written myself into plenty of stories, but the intention wasn't for me to have sex with the female alien or anything like that. That's not, sorry, Star Trek fans, but yeah, I love Star Trek, but come on. The problem with writing so we talked earlier about some terms about how authors would insert themselves into stories. The term that I was taught early on in my writing process was sentimentalist writing. That there's a whole, it's not a genre, there's a way of writing where you're writing from your personal experiences, you're trying to express something through your fictional characters. That's an author insertion. There's a lot of really fabulous literature that is, author insertion is the beginning of it, but if it's well written and it's well crafted, it's awesome, it's terrific. The fact that you start from inside your own head or inside your own heart isn't most poetry author insertion?
Mm.
And some of it doesn't suck. So I would say that is not a criteria that for the quality. I would say that the quality is the criteria for the quality.
Well, kind of tagging back to Dresden. Dresden started as a condemnation of everything that Jim Butcher didn't like, and he was able to turn it around.
So
Yeah, somebody mentioned Dresden in the chat, and Dresden started off as a way to argue with a college professor about writing. It started off as a sarcasm, as a snark. So, which I love.
Great.
I want to continue on the idea of the self-insertion, sort of tangent off of what Deanna said about the putting yourself in the narrative. Go back to the original intent of the fan fiction about putting yourself in the narrative, about seeing yourself in the stories that you like. And the idea that, back in the day when these stories were being written by adolescent girls, it was the Mary Sue type character was providing an opportunity for teenage girls to write themselves into the pop culture narratives as the heroes of their own stories.
Which they are rarely represented as.
And I think they get provided for it. But that would never happen if, a boy did that. You're ever going to put down a boy for writing himself into as the hero of a story? Why would you do that to the girl?
And I think some of that is the inherent, and this is where we get into a conversation about sexism. Our culture has a tendency to devalue anything that teenage girls like. So if you think about it, certain pop bands, well, they're not that good because teenage girls like them. I think what's the punk band that's always kind of thrown out as the example that was really that it's when girls started liking them that suddenly they were no longer a serious punk band.
Green Day. Was it Green Day?
It might have been Green Day. There was one, and I would not.
Was them or some 31?
Blink-182.
Like
Maybe.
that they weren't a serious. They were considered a serious punk band until suddenly teenage girls latched onto them. Or if you look at baby metal out of Japan, the Japanese band group that does like heavy metal, but they're dressed like stereotypical Japanese girls.
Baby metal. I know the genre baby metal.
Yeah. And so if you look at that, like serious metal fans are like, ooh, but yet,
you can look at
metal musicians think they're amazing with what they're doing with the genre. So there's a tendency in our culture that as soon as a teenage girl likes it, it must not be that good. And that, like, look at how Frank Sinatra was treated back when he first broke, because he was a teeny bopper heartthrob. Yet Frank Sinatra is considered to be one of the greatest singers of the 20th century. Right?
The whole arc of Leonardo DiCaprio's acting career can be defined as running away from Titanic.
And so Deanna brought up Victorian lit early on. I mean, those were like trashy weekly rags, is how Pride and Prejudice was published. Those were for the teenage girls.
Well, and
now it's classic literature.
But so was Dickens. Like, that's my issue with Dickens, is he was paid by the word. You can tell. Like, oh my God, he needed an editor.
I heard that he published some of that almost himself. Like, he went broke publishing it because he insisted on it being gilded in gold and stuff.
Yeah, no,
that's what I read.
But so here's the thing. That I kind of want to tie up this discussion with, because we're already close to 10 minutes over.
Joe's not here. Okay.
But we'll finish the panel and then we can talk about other stuff.
Okay.
And then I don't have to be in charge anymore.
Okay.
Joe's been replaced by a cat.
All right. Focus. So we see Mary Sue as this derisive term, this accusation that is leveled at characters, at authors, at creators. However, it, I believe, has a place. It has a place for expression. It has a place as a time of growth in writing when you're exploring. It has a place for self-exploration because you can write yourself in different ways. And the last quote that I pulled, I want to bring out from just 2 years ago, from 2019, from Paula Smith, who was the original author of A Trekkie's Tale, who coined this term, Mary Sue. And it's in an article in Smithsonian Magazine. Search for it. It's a really excellent article. And leading up to this quote, the author of the piece wrote, "There's an argument that Mary Sues open up a gateway for writers, particularly women and members of underrepresented communities, to see themselves in extraordinary characters." And then the quote from Paula Smith in this article is, "It's a way of exercising who they are and what they can imagine themselves doing."
Yeah. We've said this a lot. I know I've said it a lot. Representation matters. And if this is the only way you can get your representation is to create it yourself.
Yeah, got to start somewhere. There's a really a long time ago in a magazine that you guys have probably heard of called Heavy Metal. There was a really fabulous long-running series in which the evil corporation that controlled the Matrix system way before there was the Matrix movies, in order to send in like cavalry to go kill the good guys, they took all of these severely handicapped people and they hooked them into the machines because their brains were still working so they could do what they ordered them to. And this one girl who was a quadriplegic, almost catatonic, just very, very barely alive, they hooked her up to the machine. And when she went into the virtual system, the part of the story is that the virtual system gives you the superhero avatar that your brain like deserves or something like that, some weird algorithm. So she turned into the most powerful being in the entire universe in game and went, "Screw you guys," and she flew off to another planet and just left the whole story behind. Now, if that isn't a quadriplegic fantasy insertion of some kind, even if it's a sympathetic one, I don't care. I don't care if that's a Mary Sue in any sense of the definition, because it was an awesome moment. And if you're a handicapped person in any way and you have that fantasy that in a virtual game you could be powerful and superior and amazing or just competent, I'm totally down for that. I'm totally down for that as being in a story that's well written and well presented.
Well, and look at the lesson of that character, which is, you know what, the corporate masters put you in there to use you, and you basically hijack it and go your own way. You know, and like,
so I would just like
great story.
Darin, if you remember the author or the title of that sounds like, because I love world building, and that's one of the things I love about speculative fiction is the world building, is these other things that aren't my world. And I look for those kind of stories because they fascinate me.
I might have to crowdsource this one, Deanna, but I'll see what I can do to find it. I'm sorry, I don't know who it was.
Heinlein, go.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, I also just wanted to say something. I think there's a tendency when you first get into fandom to want to fit in desperately. And so sometimes we end up sitting at the feet of masters that don't deserve our follow. So what I mean is that we get sucked into these narratives, these things, because I remember being told, well, Mary Sues aren't very and you don't want to write like a Mary Sue. And I remember being told by people who I respected and who I actually still really like and hang out with, that this was not desirable. And it's taken me years to kind of look at that trope. Well, why do we care about the woman insertion character? Why does it matter? If a teenage girl wants to write a story where she's running alongside Barry Allen in The Flash, who cares? Let her do it. Right. You know, don't rain on people's parades. Let them love what they love. I would argue professional authors, if you're going to write, you need to write interesting characters, and so I'm willing to take criticism on that level. But I mean, I think we have to, as fandom, move beyond that tendency to jump in line with everybody else and walk lockstep. I think we have to feel the confidence to think our own things about characters and love what we love and love it unabashedly. And if that's fanfic and self-insertion characters, you go. You go boy, you go girl, you go non-gendered person, you know,
All right,
whatever you.
this is what I want to do. I want to go around and do final thoughts from everybody, and then we'll go around and do a sign off. Where can people find you on the internet from everybody? So, final thoughts, Lola.
I like well done characters. I was just thinking about I was always told Robert Heinlein is the end all be all. Go read Robert Heinlein. And I tried to read Robert Heinlein, but the female character was like flat and it just made me cringe. So I couldn't read Robert Heinlein. So, and maybe I'll give it another try. Maybe I can try to divorce myself from that cringy feeling. But I just want well-developed characters, all genders, the whole spectrum. Just give us good characters.
Darin.
I think that it is interesting that the person who started this trope, if it is a trope, was writing a parody of something that she had noticed. So it started off very meta and recursive, and it still is. I think that we need this conversation, but I think about 90% of this conversation is, dude, you need to let them have their turn and shut up.
Thank you.
Deanna.
I would say I'd like to drop the term Mary Sue. I'd like us to find another term, because I think by making it gendered, we hand ammunition to people who don't want to let other people have their turn. And I think so. I agree these characters exist, but we need another term for them than Mary Sue.
Gary.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that there is any trope can be written well. Well, almost any trope can be written well and used in a good way. And for me, I'm just sick of the laziness of it as a criticism and a way to dismiss something that it's just, well, the standard overweight cis white guy doesn't like it, so obviously it's a Mary Sue. And it's just like, oh, online fandom, shut up.
Yeah, my final thought is to echo the both of you and say, listeners, us panelists, critics who are not watching our live stream on the Classics Track Facebook group, stop using the word. Stop calling people Mary Sues. Not like, stop calling them that. That's mean. But like, stop using it as a shorthand. Make the criticism you want to make. Do you think it's a badly written character? Say so. Do you think the character has no flaws? Say so. Because there are so many different interpretations of what it means. There are so many different definitions of what it means. And lately, the one growing in popularity is woman I don't like. So stop it and write what you mean.
And can I just insert and do what your high school English teacher wanted you to do? Support your ideas with evidence from the text. The problem with Mary Sue is it lets somebody go, she's a Mary Sue, and then they're done.
Yeah.
If it is a badly written character,
it's the argumentative equivalent of walking into the room, farting, and running out.
Like, why is she badly written? What is the problem? What is the flaw? What is the thing that is making it difficult for you to believe her as a character? Where did the writer or the director or whatever go wrong? Show your work.
Let's wrap up the panel, and then we can have after panel, and it can be whatever we want. Thank you for this. This was a fun discussion. I hope that the person who said they were going to groan through this panel was expecting something other than what it actually was.
Although that was an awesome clip of Mermista, I'm going to say that.
We do. The intention was always to take the piss out of this trope. So where can people find you on the internet? Let's go in the same order. Lola, where can people find you?
At Lola Lariscy on Twitter and Facebook. I have a Lola Lariscy fan page, but I've been using my own Lola Strickland one, which is my actual name. So I crossed the streams and it's just hopeless.
Darin.
If you go to Amazon and you look up Darin M. Bush, you should find my author's page. I got about a half a dozen short stories on there. ready to go, some of which have female characters that I'm very pleased with. Actually, most of them do. But yeah, that's me.
Deanna.
I really don't have a lot of an internet presence that most people can follow. I have a teacher Twitter. You're welcome to follow there if you want to discussions of math education or technology, assistive technology in the classroom. But if you enjoy geeky things, I run the Revolution SF Facebook page. And the memes that go there are the memes that I either make or find. We are currently doing a Sci-Fighters round. Between who did I put up this week? Wash and Colonel Hughes, who had the more tragic death. You can go vote on that. I know who I think did, but
Spoilers.
Gary.
You can find me here on the Twitters, or you can find me here in this lovely little box every Thursday. Every Thursday. You found me. I'm here with my familiar who has run off to
who's
do
been kidnapped by
things.
his family, I think, in some way, shape, and form.
Yes, and so come find me on Twitter and tell me that I'm wrong.
This is Oswin.
Oswin is now my cat.
You can
Awesome.
follow her and her two sisters on Instagram at Noodle Bean Potato if you
Oh,
would like to. My name is Sue. You can find me on Twitter at Spaltor. That's Spaltor. And if you want to hear me talk about Star Trek, because why wouldn't you? You can find me at womenatwarp.com or at Women at Warp. And that is the end of the panel officially.
Hooray!
After panel.
yeah. I want to thank everybody who came to watch, especially Chad, who had some wonderful comments to make. And Chad was very glad that we did not go after Buffy because he would have come after us. And I've met Chad in person, though I don't want Chad coming after me.
Chad, I would have helped you. I mean, to be quite blunt.
And Craig, thank you for watching on the YouTube. And Tony, always a pleasure.
My son, it's time for bed. Go to bed.
Go to bed, son.
So I want to
give. Now that's the after panel action.
I want to give 5 points to Tony Ann's Hogwarts house for the trying to catch me lying comment.
I have decided, speaking of Star Trek, because that's what I always do, that I'm not going to use Hogwarts houses anymore.
Oh.
And the houses will be replaced by classic Trek alien species.
Ooh.
So, are you ready?
We're going to talk to. Okay, let me shift to Red Alert.
So, I mean, I think
I love you.
Oh, holy crap! The cat appeared out of nowhere. Ravenclaw Vulcans.
Ooh.
Slytherin Romulans. Gryffindor Klingon. Hufflepuff human.
I'm a human.
Dude, I'm totally okay with all of that, which Harry Potter wise is amazing.
I thought you were gonna go with divisions within Starfleet, so like medical versus command and
I mean, the way they were created was they were supposed to be. We say now that like culture is not a monolith, but like when these aliens were created, they were created to be monoliths. Right?
They were created
to have certain characteristics.
Yeah, I love
Hogwarts houses.
Yeah, I love the way it's put in. I think on TV tropes, Planet of Hats.
Yes.
Yeah, this is logic. That's our hat. Or the warrior race. That's our hat.
Well, they subverted it. No, they didn't subvert it. They lampshaded it. They lampshaded it in a DS9 episode where the Ferengi scientist goes, "A Ferengi scientist."
Who knew? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he knew the joke.
Yeah.
He was talking to us.
And that's the episode where you get action hero Dr. Crusher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suspicions.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so
I am shocked, shall I say shocked, that Sue brought up Dr. Crusher.
Technically Darin brought up Dr. Crusher.
Oh, true.
Well,
I am shocked that it took an hour and a half.
I have a cute Star Trek story for you.
She's been here the whole time watching over me.
That's true.
My son found my photoplay novel of the motionless picture, and he came out with it, and he went, "Mom, the book moves faster than the movie does."
Oh,
I was like, damn.
Definitely.
It's 12. Shots fired.
That's not like the real novelization, right? That's not the Gene Roddenberry novelization.
No.
Okay, because he's too young to be reading that book.
No, in the case where he takes stills, they take stills from the movie, and it's basically it's a novel, it's a graphic novel, but with pictures, basically.
Yeah,
I
I've got
wanted to make sure they didn't just put the images from the film over the text of the Roddenberry novelization.
No, it's straight out of
that
the
would
movie.
be unfortunate.
The footnotes. So this is going to be on YouTube, right? So we
It is
can't
on
go,
YouTube.
It is right now.
I mean,
Right now.
but I mean, like
Forever.
people can watch it. People can watch it with their children at 10 a.m. in the morning on a Tuesday.
Well, yeah.
So I need.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Have you-
Darn.
Statement.
Have you fucking watched YouTube?
No. I'm just
know.
saying.
Lots of monetization.
There's something about.
Wait, we could have made money off this?
Probably
There's
not.
something about the
Twitch
authors
stream.
putting themselves into the story thing that I wanted to talk about, but I won't talk about while we're on YouTube
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
because it's Dragon Con After Dark.
Put it in the chat.
Yeah,
Welcome
we
back, Joe.
do need to.
Hi,
Yeah,
Joe.
The panel's
Yeah.
over. We're just still talking, and
because you haven't got the
Yeah,
phone
we're
off.
still alive, yeah.
But we need. Oh, Joe, you're still muted, by the way.
My favorite type of Joe. Oh, did I say
Oh.
that?
I apologize.
That was your outside voice.
Deanna, he's going to kick you. Be careful.
I apologize to everyone who's still watching us.
I don't.
Yeah,
You knew what you were in for. You stuck around. Yeah.
we're very not sorry.
I know a lot of you have known Joe a long time, but I go back so far with Joe on the internet. So
You and I, one of these days we'll have to figure out which one of us knew Joe first because we were right about that same time.
did you
Because we were both on Zealot.
Did you participate in the Zealot top 10?
Yeah. That's
'Cause
how we met. Don't you remember?
We were on the boards, but I won the first Zealot top 10. That's my big
I
claim.
won 2 Zealot top 10s.
Yeah, but you didn't win the first one.
Well, no, because I was competing against you. You're Canadian. You have an unfair advantage.
I used the sequence.
Canadians are naturally funnier.
That's true.
That's why so many of our great comedians are
we learned to you have to laugh at the weather, otherwise you're gonna cry.
But we need to do another.
And snowing at the same time? No, come on.
We do need to do another Dragon Con just hang out and talk panel sometime.
Yeah.
That
We
was
were gonna do that for New Year's, but then the New Year happened, and
Everything went to shit.
Does anybody have ridiculous year bingo yet on their 2021 bingo card?
oh Lord,
No, but
I
agree
didn't
with-
have insurgency. I did not have that. Huh?
And I'm agreeing with what I saw Deanna post that 2021 is just 3 2020s in a trench coat.
And people are saying like December 37th, 2020.
Yeah. I think my favorite one is I had my 7-day trial of 2021. I want to cancel my subscription. I love that one. Perfect.
I like it. I'll go back to Disney Plus. Thank you.
Why isn't there another season of The Mandalorian to get me through this?
There will be.
That's the only thing.
Yeah.
I can just hang out for 11 months until the Mandalorian.
Hey,
I mean,
8:30 in the morning. I'm getting up with the roommate to watch WandaVision, so we can go on social media all day.
Ooh, does that start Friday? Does that start tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, if you really want to be ahead of the curve, 3 a.m. Eastern time / midnight
Yeah.
Pacific is when it drops.
I still have to bring it
for-
up.
So there will
Well,
be
if it's-
spoiler-filled articles on geek.com by like 3:45 a.m.
If this panel goes
Or
on much
complete
longer,
breakdowns of everything that happened on comic book resources.
yeah, I
Yeah,
should
Sure.
say
Yes, I
There's
do.
something about the way streaming shows drop that bugs me. Because, I mean, like, full disclosure, I get screeners from CBS for the new
Okay.
right?
Okay.
When they send them out to us, the reviews and recaps are embargoed until 9 a.m. Eastern time. So if I get a screener, I'm not allowed to write about it until 9 a.m. Eastern time, or at least post about it until 9 a.m. Eastern time, or risk losing access to my screeners,
Ooh.
right?
Mhm.
But anybody who doesn't have them, like, stays up till 3 a.m. because they were excited and watches the thing and is live tweeting it.
So you're basically you're screwed.
You're hamstrung by following the rules.
Right. If you don't want stuff on the internet until 9, don't drop it until 9.
Until 9, yeah.
Yeah, and what really annoys me now is that, especially for The Mandalorian, is like, okay, I understand there's a certain point of, you need to do your own, social media curtailing if you don't want to, but every episode would come out, there would be 16 news posts with the spoiler in the title and a picture of
that
the
drives
character.
Me crazy.
And there was no way to avoid it, as opposed to just saying, here's a review of the latest episode of this, and then talk about it, and then put in your spoiler.
That's just bad etiquette, right? Like
Yeah.
I guess it's not really like a style guide, but like our, I guess, policy is that anywhere the link to a recap is posted, there's a spoiler warning.
Mhm.
There is nothing in the preview text that is a spoiler. And the preview image is the image that the show is using to promote the episode.
Right.
Fair.
So there's
Very fair.
nothing new that's not in the promo material that was released, 5 years before.
Yeah, I was gonna say back in the day.
I was just looking at the chat, and Craig Isley says, I knew Joe first, and that technically is correct. We went to high school together. So.
Okay, Craig, you
Good
can
for you,
take the show. You have
Yeah, Craig wins.
I was gonna say back in the day it was called a press release, Sue. It was like they gave you the material you were allowed to use.
Yeah.
Because it had no spoilers in it. Yeah, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they still do, but it's all, they email you, right, the screener, and the screener has the press release on it and has a link to the approved promo photos and a link to and the text of like what the episode's about. And that's what you can use until the embargo of the screener is over.
Right.
But
and that used to work before there were digital copies of everything everywhere all the time.
And it's just that, the embargoes end hours after the episode has been available to the public.
Mm-hmm. So
and that window is what's like messing up, I guess, people who are trying to follow the rules.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The other push is to be first.
Yeah.
Like, I know a YouTuber.
Because the internet's fed by clicks. Mm.
I know a YouTuber who doesn't want the screeners. They would rather stay up and watch the episode at 3 a.m. and make their video about it to be the first one to get something posted.
It's probably the best way to do it at this point.
If we keep going as long as we want to, we could be the first ones on the internet to watch WandaVision. We could actually like live stream our reaction to it, because this might be the longest panel in the history of the Dragon Con. I don't know.
We ought to do watch parties.
When he was like, I don't want them, I was, what are you talking about? You don't like, because I was talking like, you could probably get these. I don't want them. Like, don't you want to record early and save yourself the time and not stay up all night? No, I want to be first.
Yeah.
And it's not a large channel either. But anyway, we're live on YouTube and the internet right now.
We will not name them.
I am not naming him. No.
They are the Ixnay of the Geek. Wait, no, we're not doing that.
So I think we stumbled across another interesting panel idea for the future, which is what would have happened if we had spoiler culture with classic science fiction.
Oh yeah,
there still was. It was just harder. Because I remember the whole reason the Kobayashi Maru test exists was word leaked out that Spock was going to die. So they came up with that whole sequence to kill him at the front, and then it was a fake. So everybody in the audience would go, at least. And that was the other thing. You had to hunt for spoilers. You had to go looking for them.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Now they're in your face.
I'm picturing somebody doing a reaction video to Spock's brain. Like before they finish watch, and they're like, "Oh my God, you guys, his brain is gone."
or the classic Trek episode, which looks to me like it was shot in a high school auditorium as part of some kind of existential theater festival, where it's like all black And like, there's literally like a woman on a bed for half of it. Like, what is this about? Like, this
Oh,
is,
the empath?
yeah,
Yeah,
I hate that
nobody
stuff.
knows what that's about.
Oh my god! Like, that's like, how many drugs were involved in this?
And I spoiled the hell out of myself as a kid because I didn't get to go see the movies in the theater, so I would read the novelization. Partly because I wanted to know what happened, and partly because I could participate in the talk at school about, oh yeah, I remember when this happened.
Yeah,
And
I know what you're.
God help you
you're
if you've read the novelization where they changed the script.
Or you can talk about what about this whole thing that Wedge Antilles did, and they're like, what?
Oh, what? That was in the movie.
The 75-page digression into.
I mean, like, so there's a lot of great examples. Imagine if you went into the movie Alien in the theater in the 70s, knowing that he was a robot.
Yeah.
Oh, the best example may be The Wizard of Oz. You know, when it turns to color and everyone like fell out of their seats. It's like,
imagine.
What if you
say about me that spoilers have never really bothered me?
I actually feel that they're important in my life because this is a very famous story about my relationship with my husband and myself. I didn't know that Angel was going to die, and then Angel died when she stabs him and he turns good just before. I was devastated. I was like sobbing hysterically. I ran to the phone. I was dating my husband, my future husband at the time, and I called him, and I'm like, "Angel's dead!" And I was inconsolable, right? And he still married me after I called him.
That's good.
Like, that's the miracle right there, as far as I'm concerned, even though he's a crazy fan woman. So, in fact, I'm somebody who will actually read the spoilers sometimes just to save myself the emotional trauma of losing characters. You know,
back in the olden time,
Joe called me a spoiler-loving freak once when the last book of Harry Potter came out because I was so devastated by Hedwig that I literally went on the internet and started reading. Okay, who else dies? Who else dies? Oh my god, I can't take this.
Hold on. There's a comment from Craig on YouTube that somebody spoiled Empire. That jerk told me that Vader was Luke's father, and I didn't believe him because it seemed so unlikely. Craig, I hope you're being sarcastic because Darth Vader literally means dark father.
He was 12.
When you're a kid, you're not thinking about that.
I mean, okay, and to be fair, it wasn't until I finished the last book of the Hunger Games that I looked at the naming that Susan Collins had done and went, oh, clever woman. Gale.
I have never felt that knowing a spoiler in advance has affected my enjoyment of a property.
That depends.
It doesn't bother me.
It depends. I like I've always said I like for things to watch over me. I want to experience them when I experience them. I don't want to walk in knowing this and this is going to happen. But that's more of a theatrical thing. Today it's way different. But
yeah, I love that moment of
yeah, like I didn't want to know all the details of Force Awakens before I walked into the theater. And so while everyone else was all jaded and like, well, I saw the, I didn't know.
Maybe it's just a different mindset. Even if I know something's going to happen, I still want to see how they did it and what the scene is.
Yeah,
but it depends.
It's something like, so for example, we were watching, I can't even believe I was allowed to show this movie in class, but we were watching the Sixth Sense, and I know. I was a teacher. I was young at the time, and it was probably a bad decision on my part. And I'm lucky I'm still working.
What were you trying to teach them?
Well, and to be fair, it was a dance day, and so one of the things we have to provide is a room for kids who don't want to go to the dance for religious reasons, for social reasons. But so that they stay at school, right. Okay? Because our dance, the junior high school dances, take place during the day. Okay, so we don't want them signing out and going home because then we lose half the school, and then the principal's like, "Why are we having dances? Half the kids don't come." So you have to have other activities.
I'm going to outlaw dances.
I know, it's footloose.
Teachers are like, "No."
I had
Get
that.
the kids together.
But anywho, so I think it was somebody else said, "Well, I'll get the Sixth Sense," but I hadn't seen it yet, and the kids were like, "Well, he's dead." I'm like, "What?" Well, that kind of spoiler, I don't like crying game spoilers. Like those are integral to the plot. But when it comes to major characters in television shows that I've grown attached to, I want to know so that I'm ready, right? Like I've steeled myself and I'm ready emotionally for the trauma.
Well, with that, using that example, we've watched, me and my wife and my daughter have watched all of Supernatural, all 15 seasons, like this year. And so when that last chunk of that last season came out, we waited until they were all available so we could watch them all at once. And my wife came home from school one day and she said, I couldn't resist. I had to find out. So she knew. She broke finally.
Did you call her a spoiler-loving freak, Joe, or was
I did
He's
not.
still married, isn't he?
I am still married. But no, it's a thing.
No,
I
Are
have
you
to call
going?
people. Yeah, I'm going. I have to call Jeffrey.
I have to work tomorrow too, so I'm going to have to bow out very, very soon because I have to work tomorrow. So
You guys, so much fun. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. We'll do this again very soon.
And Sue, Bethany wanted me to. I asked her if there was any points she wanted made during the panel, and she wanted me to make sure that I said that you were brilliant and fuck the patriarchy.
Awesome.
I mean, I feel weird saying I agree to the first part, but I certainly agree to the second part.
Yes.
Yes to both.
I love it, Joe. I love it.
Well, thank you guys. I'll shut us down.
No spoilers.
No. I'm gonna send Darin off into the phantom zone. You push your hand up against the window and go, "Curse you, son of Jor-El!"
I'm going to curse the platypus.
But Joe, I have the hair for Zod.
Dang it! Yeah, you do.
I'm glad you guys keep doing these. I know we're live, and I'm saying it live still on Facebook.
Go for it.
Good for American Sci-Fi Classics Track, doing this stuff every week. Because it's certainly, I mean, it's a lot of work to put together a whole con, but it's even more work to keep it going throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
Even if, the producer walks away to talk to his daughter and lets his cat run the stream.
Your cat went by at one point. It was great.
Oh, did he? Okay, good.
I think that's a panel. I think you need to do Cats of Sci-Fi. I think there's a panel there. There's a cool panel.
I've said before, my cats are like children of the corn. They all group together in like an odd formation and stare at me when it's food time.
But Deanna, if you guys are going to do Cats of Sci-Fi, I want equal time. I want to be able to do Dogs of Sci-Fi.
Sure, I'm with you. You can do Horses of Sci-Fi too.
You have to pick. You have to pick.
There's only one horse. That horse with the mullet.
That horse. Yeah, that's the only one.
Well, the RTAC group is going to come back, but
okay, wait, Deanna, I want to append my earlier statement. The only person who's allowed to do both of those Animal of Sci-Fi panels is Joe, so he can talk about Manimal.
Yeah, he's going to bring Manimal into everyone, and then there was Manimal.
By the way, speaking of Manimal,
for the record, Manimal came up in the 105th minute.
I've trained you all well. Nice. Well, you guys, so awesome. I'm so glad my cat got to be on screen. He was probably angry at the cat from the neighbor's house who comes over to torment him at night. We don't let Percy out at night, and he hates us for it. So it's a good time. It's a good time. Well, I will see you guys very soon.
All right. Thank
All right.
you.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Good night, Internet. We will see you very soon. Boop.
Is this where we freeze like we're drinking coffee?
No, we did that. Did we do it? So much fun, you guys. I will talk.
The clock's still running.
The clock's you're still live on the
Boom.
internet, Joe.
I just booted Darin out of there.
Just look at that. It's just you and I.
There's still 7 people watching. To you 7 people, we love you.
Very much.
You're great.
Very much. You're wonderful. All right, I'm gonna go because I have to actually. Darin's still watching. I'm gonna go. I have to do teacher stuff.
See you
tomorrow.
guys later.